Bandicoot Retrospective. Press start to begin.
The year is 2010, and Crash Mind Over Mutant was just released on the PlayStation 2, Xbox 360, Nintendo Wii, and PSP. As Crash Bandicoot games usually go, this game entered its development directly after the release of Crash of the Titans. Once again being developed by Radical Entertainment and being published by Activision after Activision acquired Vivendi Universal, this time the developers used the fans' wishes as inspiration towards how they would handle this game. Firstly, instead of the level-to-level structure the last game adhered to, this time Crash explores an entire open world. Other things they did because of listening to their fans was add Coco as a playable character and have the triumphant return of Dr. Nitrous Brio as a main villain. Unfortunately, since I'm playing the PS2 version, I don't get to play as Coco, but I digress. This game was developed with the fans in mind, going as far as including fan art from a contest they held within the game, and each kid that got their art put in the game is actually in the credits. That's actually pretty neat. Will this game turn out better than its predecessor, or will this game be just as mediocre? Let's find out. Sometime after the events of Crash of the Titans, Dr. Cortex and Embryo, who have been fighting since Crash 2, decided to put their differences aside and work together once again. Together, they created a device called the NV. On the surface, the NV is a device that is a virtual reality personal assistant and entertainment system. So essentially, the MetaQuest. There was a secret function to this device, however. It would permanently attach itself to its user and transform them into ravenous beasts, hypnotized to do the doctor's bidding. So essentially, the MetaQuest. We also find out that the NVs are powered by bad mojo. Where is Dr. Cortex and Dr. Embryo getting all of this bad mojo? They betray Uka Uka and suck the bad mojo right out of him against their will. That's right. Instead of Uka Uka calling the shots and pushing Cortex around, Cortex decides to take his main villain role back for this game. Dr. Cortex and Dr. Embryo mass-produce their NVs and send them to every denizen of Wumpa Island for free. Coco and Crunch end up falling under the NV's control, but fortunately for the world, Crash's NV malfunctions and Aku Aku's doesn't fit. When they see what the NVs end up doing to Coco and Crunch, Crash goes on his quest to save his siblings from themselves and stopping the doctors from carrying out their plan. Crash explores all of Wumpa Island, confronting all of the characters that Cortex and Brio made their enemies along the way, like Engine, Nina, and Uka Uka, to find out where they are making the NVs and, ironically, saving Uka Uka from getting the mojo sucked out of him. Crash and Aku Aku save Coco and Crunch from their mind control, defeating Embryo along the way, and using the teleporter inside of the wrecked Doominator to go to Cortex's space base. Crash finally confronts Cortex to stop him once and for all. When they finally confront each other for the final time, Cortex uses Embryo's mutagen that he's been drinking the whole game to keep him in check to turn himself into a mutant monster. Crash battles him, ends up jacking him, and uses Cortex to activate the self-destruct sequence within the space base, defeating Cortex and the production of the NVs once and for all. Wow, what an upgrade! They somehow took the cringe writing of the original Crash of the Titans and actually made these characters funny again. I legitimately laughed at a lot of these cutscenes. Of course, the star character here when it comes to how funny they are is Dr. Embryo. They gave him the running gag that because Cortex took credit for everything Embryo did, he now feels the need to say that he invented everything. You'd think this character having the same gimmick for the whole game would be annoying, but no. They make it really funny and it creates a bunch of quotable moments. I invented Slinkies, stop playing with them, they're mine! Or my personal favorite, read your Bible, I wrote it. Every character is handled way better, I feel. They abandoned the lol random early 2000s YouTube humor in favor of humorous character writing. Sure, they still have Crunch being Mr. T the whole time, but at this point, This has been his character since Crash Tag Team Racing, so I think Mr. T Crunch is here to stay. I really look forward to seeing all of the cutscenes that this game had to offer to see what funny writing moments came next. I also really like the fact that Cortex becomes the main villain again. All too often in these games does Cortex get shoved to the side in order for Uka Uka to lead the charge. As much as I love pathetic, egocentric Cortex, I missed when he was actually a competent villain like he is here. With all of that in mind, Crash Bandicoot Mind Over Mutant's story gets my rating of an A. Crash Mind Over Mutant works pretty similarly to its predecessor. You run, you jump, you punch, you jack, you spin, you get tired! There are a few differences between the gameplay of this game though. The first difference being a nice quality of life change. Now, when you jack an enemy, you can hit the right trigger and it will hold that Titan for you. You can then choose to stay as Crash in order to do some platforming, or you could jack another Titan and then switch between the two. This is an amazing quality of life change, especially when it comes to the next aspect of the gameplay that they changed. Once again, gone is the level-to-level structure that Crash of the Titans used, and now we're back to an open-world Crash game. This has its good and its bad points. It's good because it allows for a lot more exploration and opportunities to find secrets that a level-to-level structure just doesn't let you do. It's bad though, especially in this game, because now whenever you need to travel to another part of the map for a new mission, it causes a lot of backtracking. You will be traversing through the same parts of the game over and over and over again throughout this whole game, and it gets kinda old very quickly. This game really could have benefited from a fast travel system. The only sort of fast travel in the game you don't unlock until after you beat Uka Uka's level. Even then though, it only teleports you to 3 of the 6 areas of the game, so it barely counts. Just like before, you are able to collect Mojo in order to upgrade Crash. This will give you new combos as well as upgrades to your attacks. You can also upgrade all of the jackable enemies as well to make them more powerful. I'm not gonna lie, I only started to feel the upgrades later in the game. Hell, I didn't even feel the Titan upgrades at all. The difference in power between level 1 and level 5 feels almost non-existent when you're playing. These little tweaks makes the gameplay just a little bit better, but the constant backtracking really bogs it down for me. Not only that, but the geometry of the platforms is pretty shitty at times, especially while you're on the roller enemy. You will get stuck constantly, which gets really frustrating when you're going through the environment for your 3rd, 4th, 15th time. It just makes the game feel repetitive and boring. With all of that in mind, Crash Mind Over Mutant's gameplay gets my rating of a B. This game does much better when it comes to some of the environments. Instead of having a color palette that gets murkier and murkier the more it goes on, we got some bright greens to bright blues to vibrant oranges to dark purples. It's quite a nice variety of environments instead of just looking at nothing but murky greens and beiges throughout a whole game. Sometimes the environment inside of the Dark Mountain is a bit too dark, but that really only became a problem in that level. Now for the music. I appreciate what the game is trying to do. The soundtrack within itself is very coherent, having a different genre of music for each area in the game while having this slidey synth playing in the background to keep the soundtrack together. It's a great idea that both makes the soundtrack sound varied, match it to its environment, yet keep it feeling like it's one cohesive soundtrack. My problem is that the music fades way too much into the background. Much like titles such as Crash Nitro Kart, the music consists of too many backing track sounding parts with no main melody to hold on to. This makes the music fade in with the game's sound effects and voice clips, making the music wholly invisible. Even the boss themes are pretty insignificant. None of the tracks are bad, Just nothing to listen to on the way home from work. Now for the thing I really wanted to talk about in this section. The cutscenes. Good lord, the cutscenes in this game are so cool. So for every chapter in the game, for whatever reason, the game developers decided that each cutscene should be animated in a different animation style. We got a style mocking puppets, old-timey cartoons, comic book style, South Park, and even anime. Honestly, I don't know why they did this, but for some reason, I really vibe with it. It's just the right amount of goofy for it to actually work. With all of that in mind, Crash Mind Over Mutant's presentation gets my rating of a B+. So with Crash of the Titans, the problem with completing that game on its hardest difficulty was just how hard they made the game. This game's completion is nowhere near as difficult. But boy howdy did they trade difficulty for just the sheer amount of shit you have to do! To complete Crash Mind Over Mutant, you must beat the game, fully upgrade Crash, fully upgrade every Titan in the game, collect every golden Wumpa Fruit in the game, collect every plushie in the game, and complete all of the side missions. To give you a scope of how long it took me to complete this game, it took me just a few days to beat Cortex. It then took me an additional couple of weeks to complete the game. Completion of this game makes the backtracking even worse, because you have to go to a bunch of places you've been to constantly to see what Crash plushies you missed, what area-specific plushies you missed, obtaining certain Titans to max levels. It's just all so absurd. None of it is hard either. It's all just time-consuming and tedious. Unfortunately, there's no mojo farming glitch in this game like in the last, so there's no max leveling in 10 minutes like before. The best grind spot in this entire game is right here in the Wasteland level. Once you unlock the teleporters in the mountain level after saving Uka Uka, what you must do is teleport to Wumpa Forest with one of the Ghost Titans. Use the Ghost Titan to slow down time and beat up these tiny enemies right here. On a good run, you can get at least 30 hits on each rat before they disappear. Keep doing this until you get a hit combo of over 100, bringing your mojo multiplier to times 20. Make sure you have the Titan you want to level up in your inventory, or you can even do it with Crash as well. Go to the Wasteland with your multiplier and just destroy cactuses until the level ups are complete. These side missions are just busy work for you to do, and for what? Some concept art that you could look at in your house? Real cool. You get no in-game reward for any of this, just some art to look at. It's really fascinating to me that back in the 2000s, we really all just accepted concept art as a good completion bonus, when nowadays, with the internet around and multiple databases archiving stuff like pre-release concept art and unused assets, it's not really a reward anymore. Anyway, don't complete this game. It's way too time-consuming and very boring if you do. Crash Mind Over Mutant really tried its absolute hardest to make the Crash of the Titans formula work, and honestly, they almost got there. With improved comedic writing that actually made me laugh at times, gameplay that is better in some aspects and absolutely tedious in others, presentation that is spot on even with its weirder choices, and a long and tedious completion, Crash Mind Over Mutant was definitely a step in the right direction. But you could feel the public outcry for another Crash game that was more so like the originals and not what we have here. What's very unfortunate is that this is where the Crash Bandicoot series lied for a long time. I remember back in the day, after this game released and we saw no Crash Bandicoot release on the PS3, everybody was convinced that Crash Bandicoot was just dead. Before we leave this era, however, we still have one more game to look at. With all of that in mind, Crash Mind Over Mutant gets my overall rating of a B+. Thank you everybody so much for watching this video, and if you like the Crash retrospective, please like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one, and hit that bell so you don't miss the next episode. We also have merch in the description below where you can get our shirts, mugs, and stickers to enrich your gameplay experience. I'd like to give a special shout out to Andrew's Retro Games for being the most well-esteemed guest of them all. You could also become a channel member to get all of these videos when I'm finished editing them, as opposed to when they're scheduled to come out. Next week, we'll be looking at the next Crash game in the lineup, Crash Mind Over Mutant for the DS. With that, I'm Bottles, and I bid you, my well-esteemed guests, adieu.